Perfect. Great, thank you so much for that introduction. So as you know, my name is Charles Berger, or Charlie Berger, from the Department of Medical Biophysics here in the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Toronto. Thank you so much for having me here today to talk to you about one very specific graduate program that you can do that is being offered at U of T. So just to give you a quick overview of medical biophysics, a lot of people hear the name medical biophysics and they're like, biophysics, medical biophysics, what is that? We're a very interdisciplinary graduate department. So you don't necessarily need to have a physics background. You don't necessarily need to have a bio background. You don't necessarily even need to have a background in anything medical related. You could be an engineer. You could be a computer scientist. So we do offer a research program for many different areas. And we're very interdisciplinary. We focus on medical research primarily. Looking at the investigating the problems of medicine basically is what we say. We focus very heavily on cancer research. That's definitely one of our main areas of research. But we also have some people that are doing cardiovascular and neuroscience research as well. And another unique thing about our program is all of our scientists work in hospital research institutes. So as opposed to working within a university lab, you'll actually be working at a hospital site. All of our professors are actual employees of the hospital research institutes, and they do their research full-time with those. So they have an appointment with U of T, but their main sort of core responsibilities lie with the hospital research institutes. So those are the folks that you'd be working with if you were doing graduate studies in our program. So just to give you an idea of the lab locations that you'd be working at. So this is a map of Toronto. Here's downtown, here's uptown, midtown. So we have some sites downtown. So Princess Margaret is one of our major sites, as well as Sick Kids downtown. And then some people within the Mars Center. We also have large contingent of people up at Sunnybrook, mainly people focusing more on the physics side of things, so medical imaging, that kind of stuff. And then we do have some students at Baycrest as well, smaller number at Baycrest. Most of our students are either at the downtown location or at Sunnybrook. And then this is just zooming in on the downtown location. So here's the U of T campus here, Faculty of Medicine building. Across the street, here's the Mars Center, here's Princess Margaret, and here's Sick Kids. So these are the main sites that our students in the program typically work at. So to give you an idea of kind of where we're sitting with our numbers, we have about 250 graduate students overall between our master's and our PhD program. We have 120 faculty members, as I said, spread out between all of these different research sites. So you could end up at any of these sites depending on who you work with if you are a graduate student in the program. We receive about $100 million per year in external funding between all of our faculty members who are funded by various agencies to do their research. And we do about 1,000 publications per year. So quite a lot of work being done from the scientists within the department. So a couple of years ago, we polled all of our faculty, because we have a very diverse range of faculty who work in many different areas, to kind of boil it down to whatever our main research themes are. So some students look at these and they think that means, oh, this is a program that I do within medical biophysics. And no, medical biophysics is the program, but these are different areas of research that you could get into, kind of the overarching, because for me to go through literally everything we do in terms of research would take all day, which we unfortunately don't have. But as you can see here, this is a list of our 9 main research themes that people are doing their research under. So on our website, you can actually search by research theme. So if you're interested in one of these areas, under our faculty, you can actually search for individual faculty members who work within these areas. And some of them overlap, like somebody may do cancer mechanisms and models, but they also overlap with biomedical imaging because they touch on both areas. So some people do work within more than one of these research theme areas. So this is just a little bit of a bragging slide, just to show you some of the notable discoveries and advances that have been made in our department. This is a little bit out of date. We do have a lot more that have happened since the time that we compiled this list, but just some notable things here. The T-cell receptor was actually discovered by a professor in our department. Initial stem cell research that was happening back in the 70s was actually within our department as well. So there's a lot of biological research, but as well as a lot of imaging research as well, different types of imaging technologies and, creating new and novel types of imaging, but also finding ways to enhance the imaging technologies that we're currently using. So it just gives you a quick overview of some of the stuff that has come out of the department over the years. So in terms of our graduate training, so we are research and thesis based in terms of graduate training. We don't offer a course-based graduate program. So you would be focusing heavily on research. You do some courses in the program, but the primary focus will be on your research. We offer a rotation in terms of how to select your supervisor. So some programs require you to find your supervisor ahead of time. And when you apply, you have to identify who that person is. They have to agree to have already taken you into their lab. With us, we work differently. So you'll actually do 3 lab rotations with 3 different professors when you start in the program. Each lab rotation typically lasts for about a month, and then that goes through the first term. And based on those 3 rotations, like we try to place you with somebody who is doing research in an area that you're interested in, that matches with your background, that kind of thing. And you'll select your final your professor, your supervisor from those 3 lab rotations. It's really nice because you get a chance to see 3 different perspectives on how to approach research. So, you know, and you're not necessarily just locked in with one person. You have the option to kind of explore a few different areas. We offer a modular course program as well. In terms of the courses, we have some mandatory courses like introductory biostatistics and ethics. And then we also have a student seminar where students have to present, you know, once per term, students, or once per year, students have to present their own seminar based on their research. And then we have a lot of electives that students can choose from within the physics and the bio areas. And general time to completion for the master's program is usually about 2.5 years and about 6.2 years. This is sort of an average over all of our students. Some students do a shorter term research project. Some students do a longer term research project. So it really depends on you and your project and how it's moving along. In terms of expectations of our students, like I said, we're research focused. Students come in and do the master's program. And for some students, that's fine to just do the master's and then graduate and go look for employment after that. But we do encourage a lot of students to reclassify from the master's to the PhD. Obviously, we also allow students to apply directly to the PhD program from another master's program outside of our department or outside of the university. But once you're in the master's program, if you're currently an undergrad, you can reclassify after about a year in the program to do the PhD. So you would actually just skip over the master's and go right into the PhD. You do like a qualifying exam, which is sort of like a mini thesis defense. And if the department agrees that your project can be sort of you know, enhanced and turned into a full thesis project, you would then go right into the PhD from the master's program. And obviously you'd be supervised by a faculty member. You're expected to assist with publications that they're doing, and obviously lead to a final thesis for your project. I mean, for the program. So this was touched on a little bit in the previous presentation in terms of funding. So this is how we work for funding. So we sort of fit with the harmonized stipend agreement. So any research-based program within the Faculty of Medicine, including us, students will receive, so it's about $28,000 for the master's program and about $30,000 for the PhD program. So this is to help cover your tuition, but it also helps to cover some of your living expenses and that kind of thing. We also encourage you to apply for scholarships outside of just this minimum funding. So no matter what, you're always going to get the minimum funding, but you also have the option to apply for scholarships outside of it. So as we mentioned in the last presentation, so there's several different types of scholarships that you can apply for. If you do receive a competitive scholarship, we'll actually give you a top up on top of the minimum stipend that you'll get to keep. So there's different levels of scholarships that you can get depending on how much you get. You can receive a top up to your minimum stipend from us as well. So in terms of admissions to the program, so we basically any branch of the sciences that somebody may have studied, you could potentially find something within the program to research on. So, you know, if you look at the list here, biology, biochemistry, chemistry, computer science, engineering, genetics, you know, read the whole list, but as you can see, you know, we have a lot of different backgrounds in the program, so we would likely have a professor who could work with you in one of these areas as it relates to the medical world and solving the problems of medicine. So we evaluate applicants on your academic achievement and obviously your potential for creative research. So it's important to find applicants that are a good fit for the program. So you're a good fit for working with one of our professors who's doing research in the program, but also it's important for you know, us to know that we're a good fit for you as well. So it's not just about finding, you know, are you right for us, but are we right for you as well in terms of your journey and where you want to go with your graduate studies. So in terms of admission requirements, we look for completion of an appropriate degree. So this is for the master's program. completion of a 4-year bachelor's degree from a recognized university, minimum B+ average in the final 2 years of study. And we mentioned that this can be flexible if you do have a large amount of research experience and you can demonstrate a high aptitude for research. The minimum B+ average can be flexible. In terms of final 2 years, we don't mean 2 calendar years necessarily. If you did do your program on a more part-time basis, it's basically the equivalent of your last two years of study. So, if you do 5 courses per term, times 2 terms a year times 2 years, that's about 20 courses individually is basically what we're looking for in terms of the last courses that you've done. We also encourage international students to apply directly to the PhD program as opposed to applying to the master's program. At the Faculty of Medicine, there is a significant difference in tuition for a master's student that's international versus a PhD student. The PhD students pay the same tuition that the domestic students do pay. So because of that, we do actually recommend that international students apply directly to the PhD from the undergrad as opposed to applying to the master's program. PhD requirements, minimum A- average, so very similar to the graduate, the master's program, but you do have to have a minimum A- average in your last 2 years of study. And again, just a little disclaimer about international applicants, we do recommend you apply directly to the PhD program. If you do apply directly to the PhD program, that you will have to do a qualifying exam within 18 months of registration, though, to be able to stay in that program. So, and this applies for even if you're applying directly to the PhD from the undergrad, if you're a domestic student. So whether you're international or domestic, if you apply directly to the PhD program from the undergrad, which you can do, you will have to pass a qualifying exam within 18 months of registration to stay within in the PhD program. So the application components, as was mentioned previously, there's the SGS online application. So you apply through all of the graduate programs to U of T through the same application, and you have to pay the fee, obviously. We require 2 references. So, faculty members or research supervisors who can basically talk about your potential for graduate studies, your potential to do research. We need a letter of intent where you're talking about your academic achievements, your research interests, basically making the connection of why you think that your background would be a good fit for us, and why would be, why you would be a good fit for us, and why we would be a good fit for you, and talk about some of the research experiences that you may have. We also require you to list up to 5 faculty members that you'd like to work with. This just allows us to help to match you because we do interviews for the program. And we want to match you with somebody. The person interviewing you is likely somebody that would take you on for at least a lab rotation. So we want to try to match you with people that have a background similar to what you're looking to do your research in. So if you list up to 5 faculty members, it gives us a good jumping off point to find those people for you. You require a CV as well. And then obviously your transcripts or other relevant documents. You don't need to submit an official transcript when you're applying. However, if you do get into the program, it'll be conditional upon you producing a actual certified document that indicates that you're either completed your program or completed the courses that were in progress. So it needs to be an official transcript at that point, but you can submit an unofficial transcript for the application. And then, as I mentioned, we do interviews for candidates with strong applications. So the ones that we are considering for the program will be interviewed. And we do this on a rolling basis as per our admissions deadlines. Speaking of which, so we offer sort of 3 main deadlines for the September start. So the first one is November 19th. And then so after November 19th, any completed applications we'll assess, and then we'll send for a round of interviews to those that were successful. And then we have another deadline on January 6th. So that's sort of the early acceptance. And then we'll do another round then of interviews. And then we'll continue to accept applications till March 19th, 2021. However, I would like to stress, apply early, just because the earlier you apply, the earlier you'll know if you've been given admission to the program. And this will make it easier for you to apply to scholarships and things like that. Some scholarships that we mentioned before have deadline dates as early as March. So, if you kind of know where you're going and have an idea of what you might be doing, it'll be that much easier to help you fill out those applications for any scholarships that you might want to apply to. And it just, and then that way spots haven't potentially filled up with profs that you may want to work with when they've already found people, that kind of thing. So even though you can apply till March 19th, I would definitely recommend to apply earlier. If November 19th isn't realistic in terms of your time frame, definitely apply by January 6th if you can. And then you can also submit applications for January start. The previous January start deadline was the beginning of October, so for 2021, but for 2022, it's usually early October that the applications are due to start in January. So if you are considering a January start, you can do that as well. So in terms of where our students might go after MVP, this is based on a survey that we did in 2015. This will be updated soon because every 5 years we do a sort of a 5-year review. But just to give you an idea, we get students going into areas like academia, pharma and biotechnology, government, education, or professional practice like medicine, law, business, that kind of thing. So here's a pie chart that gives you an idea of where our master's graduates have sort of gone between 2012 and 2015. And then our PhD graduates here as well. So a couple of key resources for you. If you go to this link here, medbio.utoronto.ca/handbook, you can actually download our graduate student handbook and our course module booklet. And this is for all of our current students, but it's public on the website. So if you want to browse it and get an idea for sort of the policies and procedures, the courses that you're going to take, that kind of thing. These little cover pictures are out of date. Obviously, we have ones for this year, but it can give you a good sense for what the program involves and what are some of the expectations for students within the program and with the courses and that kind of thing. So I also invite you to, oops, I think somebody's got their mic on. So I also invite you to keep in touch with us here. I'm going to paste this into the chat. Give me 1 second here. Oops, sorry about that. Give me 1 second here. I had it copied. There we go. So I'm going to paste this into the chat here. So these are some links to some ways that you can help stay in touch with us. Let me go back here. So you can sign up to get more information at the link here for sign up. You can download a digital brochure at that link with the file. And then we have a open house, a virtual open house actually happening this Saturday. Good timing. So you can actually sign up for the open house there as well. So it's going to be run similar through Zoom. It's a chance to get some more information about the program, hear from some of the students in the program about their experiences in terms of their own graduate work and what they enjoy about the program, and just a chance for you to kind of find out more about what we have to offer. Really briefly, we also offer a summer student program as well. So if you want to learn about how to get some summer research experience with the department, crossing our fingers that will run this year in light of COVID. It's also an opportunity to find out more about that as well. And now I'll just open it up to any questions that you may have about the program. Okay, so I'm looking at the chat here. So I graduated from U of T 1 year ago, and I'm currently taking a 1-year master's program at Queen's University. So what will admissions look to satisfy the final 2-year requirements? Okay, so if you've already done some graduate work, it's still basically the last 2 years of study or the equivalent. So if you've done 1 year of your master's program, then we'll take those first year courses that you did from your master's program, and then we may combine it with some courses from your undergrad, the last courses that you did to satisfy that requirement for the courses that we're looking for admission. Can we apply to the master's and PhD program for MVP? If you aren't accepted into the PhD program, are we automatically considered for the master's program? Can we apply to both? No, you would have to do 2 separate applications. Now, if you are an undergraduate student, what I might recommend is that you apply to the master's program, and then you can reclassify, as I mentioned before, into the PhD program after about a year in the program. The nice thing with doing it that way is it gives you the chance to kind of feel out the program. And if you decide that maybe you just want to stick with the master's program, you can do so, or you still do have the option to reclassify into the PhD program. But it would be 2 separate applications. If you apply to only the PhD and you're not accepted for that, we wouldn't just automatically consider you for the master's program. You have to apply to both, basically. But I would recommend doing it that way, where you apply to the master's program and then apply once you're in the program to reclassify into the PhD. So when you said you need 5 prospective supervisors, do we need to have contacted them, or is it more, I've read their research and I wish to work with them? Yeah, it's more that. You don't need to have gotten in touch with them. If you choose to get in touch with professors, that's totally up to you, but you're not expected to have communicated with them or to have them agree to anything at this point. It's just more showing that you took a look at what professors are offering in terms of the research that you could be doing with them, and that you've given it some thought. So that's kind of more, and then it gives us an idea of what areas you want to kind of work within, and it allows us to match you with potential supervisors for interviews, because you may be interviewed by more than one supervisor who might be interested in taking you into their lab. And then usually one of those people becomes your first lab rotation, and then may become your permanent supervisor, depends, but you don't need to contact them ahead of time. So from Rohan, I am an international student, but I am in the bachelor's program at U of T. Will I be considered as an international student then? Well, it depends on your status. If you're still considered an international student when you graduate, then yes. A domestic student is defined as either a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident of Canada. So if you're still considered an international student when you apply, if your status changes, then obviously we would look at you as a domestic student. But if you're still considered an international student when you graduate and when you apply to our program, then you would be looked at as an international student as well. So under the reclassification program, would the time we give for the master's program count towards the PhD program if you're successful in reclassifying? Well, basically it would, because any courses that you've taken up to that point would count, because students in the master's or the PhD program take the same courses. You just take more of them if you're a PhD student. So you may have to pick up a couple of extra courses. But yes, like the work you've done previously would basically just go from the master's. Because you're skipping over the master's and you're not graduating with a master's degree, you're going to be going right into a PhD. Any work you've done as a part of your master's thesis building up to that point will have decided, yes, you can expand that into a full PhD program. So it's not, there's no time wasted if you do that. Can you apply to PhD with only an undergraduate degree? Yes. You can apply directly. We call it a direct application to PhD from the undergrad. As I mentioned, the requirement is a bit higher. You need an A- average in your last 2 years. And you also, should have a strong research background, just because it is much more competitive when you're doing it that way. Also, if you are granted admission to the PhD program directly, you do have to do a qualifying exam within 18 months of starting in the program. And basically, it's similar to like a mini thesis where you'll get together with your committee and you'll sit down and present to them what you've been working on, and they'll basically decide, yes, you can remain in the program. It's not very common that they say no. So if you got into the program in terms of the requirements and kind of how stringent it is to go direct from your undergrad to the PhD, and you work hard, you'll definitely be successful with that. Can we be successful in this program without an extensive physics background? Yes, you can. Having some knowledge of physics is important, but really at the end of the day, our program shakes out to, we don't call them streams, but we do have students that are more on the biology side, and maybe they need to know like a first year level of physics in order to do their work. And then we have some students that are more on the physics side where they're doing a lot of physics heavy stuff, and then they maybe have to know some biology to understand, if they're, say it's MRI technology that they're looking at, they have to know what they're seeing when they actually do the imaging, but they're more looking at the actual hardware that's creating the images, as opposed to, you may be on the biology side and you're using the MRI to understand, to look at these images. You may have to understanding of the principles of MRI basically, but you don't have to know the ins and outs of how to actually create an MRI machine. So you don't need the extensive physics background. Having some physics knowledge can be an asset in the program though. So I won't have the chance for rotations with potential PIs. Sorry, I've just got to go back to your initial question, Rohan. Yeah, so with international students, as I mentioned, we do recommend that they apply directly to the PhD program. If you're applying directly to the PhD program as an international student, you'll do rotations. If you apply to the master's as an undergrad, as an international student, you have to have your PI lined up ahead of time. So that's the only exception to the rotations, is if you're an international student, you apply to the master's program, you have to have your PI lined up ahead of time. But if you're applying to the PhD program directly from your undergrad, you don't have to have that person lined up, and you'll do rotations. Do we need to take the reclassification exam if we transfer from master to PhD? Yes, you do. In order to, like, if you graduate from the master's program and then you want to do the PhD, you can apply separately. But if you're wanting to start in the master's program and then reclassify to the PhD, then yes, you do have to do the reclassification exam. That's a requirement in order to be reclassified from master's to PhD. In terms of international students, will funding and other fees change if we transfer from master's to PhD? So the funding is a little bit different for master's versus PhD. So I think that the difference is about $2,000. So you would be subject to a change in that. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to pull up our website here. That'll help me. Oops, sorry about that. So for our program fees currently, so our base funding for an international master's student is, actually it's slightly higher just because the international master's student tuition is $26,000. So if you're a PhD student as an international student in our program, it's $7,800. So as you can see, that the Faculty of Medicine has made the tuition fee for master's students, international master's students, much higher. So your total base funding is actually higher if you're a master's student because it has to cover the extra tuition. So your base funding for a master's student international is $47,000 roughly, and if a PhD student is $31,000 roughly. But you have to remember that the PhD program, it's about $19,000 less in terms of the tuition fee. So that's why we encourage you to apply directly, because the person who's paying your base funding is your PI. So it's actually in your best interest to apply to the PhD, because they would prefer that, because then they don't have to spend as much in terms of the base funding. So, and it's also in your best interest to apply directly to the PhD if you do want to pursue a career in research. Any other questions? If you do think of any other questions, I've typed my email address in there. So please feel free to send me an email. And if you think of any other questions you have about the program, if I don't know the answer, I can definitely get you in touch with the person who does know the answer.
Okay, then I'll stop recording.